Hello, class. Just wanted to let you know that the African test will be coming this week, but I'm unsure of the best format for that. So when it pops up, just make sure to take it by Friday. It will not be hard, and once I find the correct format for it, then I'll have that up to you ASAP. Just so you know that another thing in this class that might be changing is we may have a Zoom class on Tuesdays as a possibility coming in. This is just so we can check in with attendance and also see where you are in the class. It won't add it to your Zoom weight. It won't add to the struggle you're already having. I know that you guys are feeling a bit overburdened by a lot of your classes, and I just want you to know it's not going to change the way my class is done. My class is still going to be done this way, where I post a video with the keywords, vocabulary, and what we're going to be teaching during the week, and then I will lay out a bunch of videos for you to watch during the week. That Zoom lesson, like I said, is just for me to check in with you, get attendance in, and see where you are, and also give you some verbal reminders to let you know that things are needed, and we can check in with your field journals and your progress as well. Make sure that you do your field journals. Um, Basically, attendance is taken every day. And even without a Zoom lesson, I have to take attendance. If I don't see any work being done, I cannot mark you present. And that means some of you that didn't do your field journals last week have 5 unexcused absences already. Do your field journals. I will also be adding in daily discussions to post in that we can help with attendance, I hope. So be on the lookout for those discussions. Now, I'm not needing anything huge, just, I might post up something in regards to the videos that you're watching, just to bring up a discussion and make sure that you participate in those. Don't ignore them. That could be your attendance for that day. So yeah, so we are going to start talking about Europe this week. So when we're talking about Europe, what we're going to do is Monday we're going to focus basically on European countries, what they are, and how to categorize them. Just try to ignore this mess behind me. They're doing some sort of lawn work because apparently that's essential, which means they get to blow these blowers behind me, which is quite annoying. So we're going to start with Europe. We're going to get these European countries, and we're going to try to categorize them the best we can and get you to understand what it means to be European. And when we're studying Europe, what does that mean? What are we going to be looking into culturally? And what are we looking into, how can we discover the culture through their music? Secondly, we're going to then start on our first country in Europe, which is Greece. And that's going to take us the rest of the week, Greece. So a lot of you have already worked on Greece, I'm sure, if you've taken Mr. Adamson's class or not, but we're going to re-hit a couple of those things just to get you up to date with what I'm expecting you to know about Greece. So a couple things. We're going to start with Europe. Now, Europe's got a bunch of countries in it, and as we've already discussed, Europe used to be Eurasia, until they decided to create the political boundary in between Europe and Asia because of their, well, bluntly, their racist policies. They did not want to be associated with the lesser Asians, and therefore created a political line, a political boundary, which then created these two different continents, which are not really continents because they are connected by landmass. So Europe is basically it's a collection of a bunch of smaller countries than we're used to seeing in a lot of these other continents. Now, there are so many countries in Europe that I've decided for myself to categorize them into instead of into areas like we've done with Africa and Middle East. We had Mashriq, Maghrib, and the Arabian Peninsula for Middle East, and then we had Central Africa, West Africa, Eastern Africa, South Africa for Africa. But doing that for Europe doesn't help us culturally at all. So, we could do Western Europe, Eastern Europe, and Northern Europe, but culturally, that's not going to tie them together. So, when you think about what is the best way to tie countries together in Europe or categorize them together in culture, you have to look at, what's happening in each of those countries. So, what if we did it by language of origin? If we categorize it by the language of origin, then we're looking at a similar tie between the countries based on the language that's spoken there. And if there's a tie by language, most likely the culture followed the language, right? So I find that to be the best way to categorize European countries. So we're going to do that right now, and I'm going to put the list up so you can see it. And just try to keep up. Like I said, you can pause this video at any time if you need to write things down, okay? So first, what you have to understand is that a lot of European languages come from, I'm not going to say Asia because it was all combined before. Like I said, you have Eurasia. Languages aren't going to stop at a border just because, some politician put it there. These borders didn't exist in the past. And so a lot of languages come from, that Asian influence or that what we call Indo-European influence. So there are a lot of languages spoken in Europe that are based on this Indo-European language influx that was created during, early times. Some of the languages that follow the Indo-European policies are Finnish, Hungarian, Estonian, Basque, and Roma. So for those that don't know what those languages are from, that's going to be from Finland, Hungary, Estonia, Basque, and from the Gypsy group, the Romas. So those are really the cultures and the areas of Europe that still use the Indo-European language in their current language today. There are also some of the countries that use multiple languages in their country just equally. One of them is Switzerland. Switzerland speaks French, German, and Italian equally in their country, just depending on which part of Switzerland you come from. And another would be Belgium, which does, either German or French. So you do have little anomalies like that as well that you have to be on the lookout for. But right now, I'm going to be dividing these groups into some of the languages for you. So first and foremost, what I want to talk about is the Germanic language, because the Germanic language is not exactly what you would think it is. It does not mean German. It means that it is rooted in the Germanic language, the ancient Germanic language. Believe it or not, the language we're speaking right now, English, is Germanic. So when we're talking about Germanic, we're talking about German, High German, Low German, English, a lot of these guttural type of sounding languages. They're not very flowy, musical. They just have this guttural sound to them. So when talking about those, on our Germanic list, we have countries such as Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, United Kingdom, and that's in England and Scotland, Netherlands, Iceland, and Luxembourg. So a lot of these countries, they're either speaking German, English, or maybe a little mixture like Dutch is very Germanic as well up in Denmark. And you've got some of the, some Norse languages as well. Moving on, we're going to now list out the Italic. Now, when we say Italic, yes, it's based from Italy, but it's more the Romantic languages. Not romantic as in, here's a flower, let's go out for a walk on the beach. Romantic as in, it derives from Rome, and therefore it's Latin-based, okay? So, when looking at some of these languages, these Latin-based languages, we have France, Italy, Belgium, Spain, Portugal, Romania, Andorra, and Monaco. Okay? So those are the most the two most common types of languages that you would think to find from Europe, because those are some of the big cities, French, Spanish, and Italian all coming from the Romantic languages, and then English and German all coming from Germanic languages. So when you think of Europe, those are kind of the languages that you think of. However, there is one language type that is larger than both combined. And we don't hear about it much because you're not taught much about these countries when learning about Europe. And those are the Slavic countries. So when we say Slavic, we're talking about the areas near Russia. A lot of the Slavic languages and cultures come from those areas such as Ukraine, Russia, and Lithuania. So let's look at some of these Slavic speaking countries. So, of course, like I said, we have Russia, we have Latvia, Lithuania, Belarus, Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Moldova, Ukraine, Bulgaria, Macedonia, Serbia, Montenegro, Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia-Herzegovina, and Georgia. So I find it interesting how, we think of Europe as mostly in those Germanic and Romantic language speaking countries. But look how many countries speak Slavic. So why don't they get, as much attention as the others? And it's most likely because these are our poorer countries in Europe. Not only are they poorer, but, they're just massively clumped together over there, a lot of them. So yeah, we will go into a lot of those countries when discussing further units. So we have one other language group that has kind of died out, but it's still prevalent in a lot of these countries, and that's the Celtic language group. And so for those that don't understand Celtic language, please do not call it Celtic. That's a basketball team. The correct term is Celtic. So Celtic, some parts of Ireland will speak that still. All of Wales still speak Celtic. Some parts of Scotland and all of Cornwall. And you'll find that most of those are in the UK, the United Kingdom. But Gaelic is the other term for the culture behind Celtic language. And so it's something I really want to learn myself and get to know. But like I said, it's kind of dying out, so it's hard to get any lessons in that. And then there are two countries that fall under what's called independent languages, and those are Greece, as they have their own language that is not from any of these other ones. That's because Greece is so old. Greece is older than most of these civilizations. And the second being Albania. Okay? So that is how I would probably keep these countries categorized for now, just so that you can better find a way to remember them, better find a way to understand them, and keep them in your thoughts and notes, so when you're taking a test on this, that this is the best way to keep them categorized when we're talking culture, is just through their language. So next, I want to hit the music aspect of this unit and this lesson. So as we've been doing with all of the other regions, we've been using music, we've been using art, we've been using dance to try and understand the culture of the people. Well, when we're in Europe, we hit a giant wall with that. And that's because music as we know it, aka Western music, is all derived from European movements in music during the Renaissance era. So what I mean by that is our great composers in Western Europe, such as Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, Vivaldi, Mendelssohn, and many more, all come from Europe. And they were all inspired to create what we now know in music today, after the rebirth of music in the Renaissance. So they created the music we're using today. And what I mean by that is they created the style of music, all the rules that music follows and what sounds the best for the human ear, what chords should follow, which priority, and basically how do we play music today in even America, because we're considered part of Western music. So that Billie Eilish song that you listen to today uses the same musical constructs and concepts that those European composers created back in their day. So why is this a huge wall? Well, how can we glimpse European culture through its music if the music represents where all Western music comes from? So, you know what I mean? It's become such a huge impact on Western music as a whole, music in Europe, music here, music in Canada, music in South America, that it all goes back to, we'd be learning more music history rather than global music culture. And this is not a music history course. So I don't want to cover Bach and Beethoven and Mozart, even though they're amazing, but they don't represent their culture. They represent a larger movement in music that then turned music into what we have today. So what I'm going to do, the way to fix this, is we are going to focus on getting closer to the people and their culture, and not so much with music in a universal practice as is taught in universities and sung in studios across the world. So this music is called folk music, and it literally means music of the people. So that's what we're going to be focusing on, is the folk music of each area. I will be doing a little bit of history, but not music history. It's more going to be European history of the countries tied in with their music. But we're not going to go into the whole importance of Bach during the Baroque period versus Mozart during classical and Beethoven during Romantic periods. We're not going to do all that. That's a broader spectrum of European music, but I want to hit mostly the folk music of each of these areas and the historical context of that folk music in the areas. So that's basically where I want to leave us with in Europe as a whole. So understand that we will be doing that. I will have you watching a video about Europe. I will have you watching a video about classical versus folk music, and just understand that Monday is going to be mostly about understanding Europe and what it is and what countries fall inside Europe. Tuesday, you're going to start your introduction into Greece. So I'm really excited to talk about Greece. I love talking about Greece because it's said that music as we know it and theater as we know it started in Greece. So we're going to begin in ancient Greece, and ancient Greece is said to be the birthplace of music and theater, as I said. And in fact, they even have a god for both. They have Apollo for music, and they have Dionysus for theater. So what are the importance of these two gods in their pantheon? So we will discuss, you will be watching a video on Greek gods and their pantheons, of course. But what I want you to understand is now we're going into uncharted territory. When we looked at the Egyptian pantheon, when we looked at the Babylonian pantheon, when we looked at any of these other pantheons, where were the gods of theater and music? And as the pantheon grew newer, they probably added them in there, but the Greeks had them in from the beginning. This is how important music and theater and the arts were to the Greeks, to the ancient Greeks. So the ancient Greeks, in a way, didn't just start theater, but they worshipped it. They didn't start music, they worshipped it. It was part of their lives.